What is muscle response testing? What is applied kinesiology? To the untrained eye, this natural approach to identifying underlying health imbalances can seem mysterious or even dismissed as pseudoscience. Yet thousands of people nationwide that have experienced it firsthand call it life-changing. Today we take an honest, in-depth look at applied kinesiology, how it works, what it measures, how it aligns with a biblical perspective for Christians, and how to distinguish credible practice from New Age imitators. Hello, everybody, and welcome to LifeTVnow, where we unpack all matters of truth, faith, and freedom. Today's program is going to be nothing short of absolutely fascinating. But before we dive in, let me introduce who's here. She's an integrative nutrition health coach with a Master of Science in Health Education, my co-host, Jamie Woodall. And he's a doctor of chiropractic who holds a Master's of Science in Traditional Oriental Medicine and is a certified natural health professional. Please welcome Dr. Ralph Umbriaco. Dr. Ralph, I want to say at the onset of this program, there's probably nothing like this anywhere online, the stuff we're going to be talking about today. I've never seen a presentation like the one that we're about to do. I have never seen this on Christian television. And yet there's something called muscle response testing that I have seen personally within my family construct, mostly at the hands of people like Dr. Joshua Vance, Dr. Matthew Sams, and of course, you yourself introducing me to some of these concepts almost a decade ago. For the first several years, I said, I can't really explain the science behind how it works, but I don't sense anything spiritual that disagrees with my discernment. I trust Dr. Ralph to be someone who loves the Lord with all of his heart and is a complete and total rejecter of the New Age or ancient mysticism, or the idea of seeing a soothsayer, or like we read in Deuteronomy 18:10 through 12, where we're talking about divination, how we as Christians are forbidden to speak to the dead or practice necromancy. And yet, when you get into conversations like applied kinesiology, there can be some misunderstanding about how it works. And probably even now, as the viewers at home are watching, okay, muscle testing and applied kinesiology start making sense, man. It's something you're not going to see practiced in a lot of your conventional Western doctor's offices. This is going to be something that you may experience if you see a chiropractor or somebody that is knowledgeable in ancient herbs or the application of God's medicine. If somebody goes on the internet to try to look up something like applied kinesiology or muscle resistance testing, they're going to see a whole host of differing opinions about what it is. And so rather than to suggest that they do that, let's just deal with what this means to you, my friend, Dr. Ralph Umbriaco. And let's, for the purposes of being fair, let's keep the conversation here at LifeTVnow within the framework of what we're talking about. So this is not a blanket endorsement from Dr. Ralph of everything that you're going to go read on the interweb. When you think of muscle resistance testing, what does that mean for you? And how do you use that when you're dealing with clients and helping those navigate anomalistic disease and trying to find the root cause of where it's coming from? And they come and they say, Ralph, I've done blood labs and MRIs and they can't find this thing and I'm plagued with chronic fatigue or I've got this or that autoimmune condition. And I've watched Ralph within just moments put kind of the puzzle together. And I'm telling you, then what he starts to explain needs to be done nutritionally or in terms of lifestyle with God's medicine, it begins to work. And so again, you're not going to see content like this really anywhere else. And I want an intelligent conversation brought to the table. So I'm starting with you. What is muscle testing?
So if you talk to a kinesiologist that's working in the healthcare profession, they might say it's the study of motion, the study of things like body strength. And if you talk to somebody like a neurologist, they're going to say, well, we're going to do some nerve conduction testing. We want to see how quickly a nerve impulse is traveling up and down a certain muscle or system. But if you talk to somebody who's involved in actual muscle response testing, what they're using that for is they're using points of low electrical resistance on the skin surface which in Western medicine is usually known as bioelectric points. You can call them acupuncture points or meridian points. And you're doing an interaction between the practitioner and the actual person being tested, where you can touch these points and you can test a response from a muscle. In this case, we will use the deltoid muscle, which is the shoulder muscle. If I touch a point and the muscle remains rigid, that means the reflex is intact and I can move forward because there's nothing of major concern at that moment. If I touch another point and it goes markedly weaker in its muscle response, then that means that there's some type of an electrical compromise, and then I can infer, well, if there's an electrical or a magnetic compromise, there's probably some chemical imbalance as well. So it's just a quick, easy way to gather data. The data doesn't tell you what to do. You still have to interpret the data, but it's information directly from the body in real time.
So Dr. Ralph, it's Tuesday, for example. Jamie Woodle, let's say she walks in and she says, Dr. Ralph, I've been experiencing hot flashes. I've been dealing with these migraines. They come on very quickly. They last a long time. You would be able to, without drawing expensive MRIs and so forth, through muscle testing, get at least a snapshot in real time of what the underlying root causes might look like.
That is correct. So it's not going to give you a diagnosis. It's not like a ticker tape coming out that the patient has X, Y, or Z. All it is it's showing you chemical imbalances or electrical imbalances, and you can find out where blockages are, and then you can have a determination as to, okay, how are we going to remove this blockage? How are we going to rebalance this electrical system? And once you do that, then the body can come online and go on with the business of healing itself, which is what God designed it to do.
So Dr. Ralph, can you walk us through some of what that might look like and how it might work?
Sure. So one way to demonstrate how the body is an electrical entity is you can go on Amazon and you can purchase, there are several manufacturers, they purchase these little scientific toys. They call them energy balls. There's a couple of other names on it as well. So when you open it up, basically you have a ping pong sized ball and it has some electronics in it. And then it has two contacts on the back. And when you close the contacts and you close the circuit, it makes an eerie little sound and it flashes. So if I close the circuit, that's what's created is the sound. But I could actually close the circuit with another person. So if you would, Jamie, grab like this with your other hand, this hand here.
This hand.
Yeah. Okay, now put your finger out. And you can go here, here. All we're doing is we're connecting a circuit. And once you close the circuit, then you can activate the electronics inside the ball. So that's a demonstration about how electricity can conduct through the body, even through another person.
And if you weren't able to hear that from home, if you weren't able to see that, the little ball flashes red whenever the circuit is complete. And with Jamie on one side and Ralph on the other, it was not active at all. It was not until he touched her other finger or he tapped her forehead that it completed the circuit, in case you missed that from home.
So to take it a step further, because we know that we can close a circuit and we can make things happen, then we can start doing some muscle testing. So usually you would come up and ask the person, do you have a shoulder problem?
No.
Okay, so if there's no shoulder problem, then what we can do is we can take the arm and we can have it right about there, and you can relax the wrist. I'm going to take my hand, I'm just going to grab lightly your wrist, and I'm going to push down, don't let me down. So I push, she stays, that's called a lock. Now, keep holding me up.
Okay.
I'm going to come over here, and she unlocks.
Oh, I tried really hard to resist.
So there's lock. I'm going to push harder,
Okay.
and then there's unlock. Good. So now all that means is there's nothing wrong. It just means she's electrical. Some people, they're not drinking enough water. They don't have enough electrolytes. They've been sweating too much. They might walk into your office and they're not electrical. I might have to give them some salt water and have them hang out for 10 minutes before I could even test them. So she's testable. Now, anything that's electrical has a positive and a negative side. So the front of the body should have an overall net charge of positive, and the back of the body should have an overall net charge of negative. So if I use the back of my hand, which has a negative charge, against the front of her body, which has a positive charge, then everything's strong and intact. If I flip my hand over, the palm is positive, the front of the body is positive. When two like charges meet, do they attract or do they repel? So they repel.
Yeah.
So here we go.
So you feel a significant difference in the resistance.
I do.
One is that you're feeling resistance, and then one almost feels like she's just...
I do because I have a mechanics feel for it, but the idea is to get the patient to understand that. But I mean, it's readily viewable and it's
Oh, for
demonstrable.
sure.
Yeah.
So
I was just asking more if you feel a difference in the pressure,
Oh,
the
absolutely.
resistance is strong versus weak.
yes.
And then what do you do with that information?
Well, let's say you find out that there's an area of the body that's weak or strong. So let's test, for instance, let's test the stomach, because a lot of people have digestive issues, and that's weak. Let's test the large intestine, and that's weak. Now, I want to find out which is the primary and which is the secondary. There's a way to momentarily turn off the point by brushing the skin, and it confuses the electromagnetic in the local area. So if I turn this off and I come to the stomach, is it weak or strong? And it's still weak. So clearly, the large intestine isn't having as much effect on the stomach. But if I turn the stomach off and then I come to the large intestine, it remains strong. So in this particular case, if it helps me to narrow down a priority. Now, in the gastrointestinal tube, problems tend to run from north to south. So if I could handle something on the upper end of the conveyor belt, I'm going to get a better benefit at the lower end of the conveyor belt. So this is a good demonstration just to show you how that works. But it works with anything in the body. You can triangulate and find out, here's where somebody has a headache. Okay, well, that's interesting. Why are you having headaches? Headaches aren't a disease. Headache is a sign or a symptom. Are these muscle tension headaches? Are these organ headaches? Are these toxemia headaches? Are these hormonal headaches? You have to try and trace it back. So this is one way I can turn things on and off and pit one element against the other to find out where is the lineage. How did the dominoes fall for this person?
Oh, and for some additional context, Dr. Rolf doesn't know, but I actually have EPI. My pancreas does not make enough enzymes, which causes a lot of stomach and digestive upset. So he didn't know that either.
No, I swear, I promise you, I've known Jamie for 20 years. I have never one time talked with Ralph about that being a chief issue. And one of the things that she has to commit the most to in terms of her proactive health is making sure that she does not trigger this thing with her pancreas and then all of a sudden the bloating and the discomfort. And so as God bears witness to what I'm saying to be truth, that's an example of what I mean when I've said I've taken my children into Dr. Ralph, and within a few moments, he's got a pretty good idea about what system might be under distress. And then the guy also happens to know herbs and can now help my family navigate nutritional protocols.
Another thing is if you ever have, let's say, a bench grinder, which is a large heavy motor, and you turn it on, you can come over with an electromagnetic meter, and as you approach the bench grinder, you'll start seeing the needle and the meter rise up. And that's because you're entering the field that is being generated by the bench motor. Well, the human body is the same thing. Energy runs in the body. As a matter of fact, the reason she can animate is because of energy. If you sucked all the energy out, there'd just be tissue. There wouldn't be any animation. So because her body generates a field, in Western medicine it would be called a bioelectrical field, then that field tends to run from the inside of the body and go outside in what's called a toroid, which is basically if you had like a soup can with both ends out, it's be like energy flowing in and out of the soup can, or a donut, energy flowing in and around the donut. So technically, I want to demonstrate that because her body's electrical, she has a field. People who are healthy have a field that's out quite far from their body. People who are sick, you could be right up against the skin and they barely know that you're there. So if I take the arm, so at some point in time, I am going to enter her field and she's going to go weak. So about there, and that's about the average size field, about 18 inches to 2 feet. Now, because of that, I know that right now I'm in her field. Technically, you don't have to touch someone on certain points. You wouldn't want to touch, we respect someone's privacy. There's going to be the breast tissue and things like that. But you can still test them because you can just need to come within the field. So if I do this, hold strong, she goes weak. If I do this, she's strong. If I do this, she goes weak. If I do this, she's strong. So you need to understand that if you're sensitive or you're worried about, well, someone's going to touch me in places I don't want them to touch me, but I got a problem there and I need it to be looked at, they don't have to touch the point. They just have to be close enough to be able to read what's going on in that person's particular energy field.
One of the things that we do as Christians all the time without batting an eye is we lay hands on people and we pray. You see it in church. You see it when healing is done. God spontaneously and miraculously will heal someone. And it will begin with that moment that they stood in faith and had their brothers and their sisters stand and place hands on them. And yet, for someone new to what they're seeing on TV right now, some of this may just be unusual. Or they may want to know, where does the NIH support this. And I just want to remind the audience at home, what we're doing is, in my view, is we're reclaiming from New Age mysticism and a lot of what New Age has hijacked. Like the world has taken our rainbow.
Yeah.
The rainbow is to serve as a promise that God is not going to destroy the world again via the flood. And yet, what do you think of in pop culture when you think rainbow? It means something completely different, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, they've done this with words like vibration. Well, the world vibrates. And yet you hear the word vibration, immediate, whoa. Why do you have an apprehension to the word energy?
Or frequency.
Think about it. Frequency. We already know that, plants die in the presence of harsh frequencies. We know that cells begin to duplicate more healthfully in positive frequencies, that people thrive in places where they don't feel tension. Well, those are all feelings and senses. You walk into a place. How many of you ever walked into a place and just didn't feel right?
Yes. Yeah.
Or you meet someone and you're like, I don't know, he's got a Cheshire smile, but that guy, there's a spiritual discernment there. Some of this, I believe, has been hijacked from forces that want you to be nervous about the new age, or to cast this in mysticism, or again, communing with spirits for secret knowledge. What is tragic to me, though, is that people will take medicinal interventions that have known side effects to cure the underlying, or to treat the underlying root cause of some kind of a disease, right? They will take things via IV that wipe out all cells to try to show up to battle the most malevolent of disease, because their doctors have told them this is what it looks like to fight. And they won't bat an eye. They'll go straight from their prayer meeting to the Chinese buffet and drink pop and soda that has known cancer-causing sugar, excitotoxic effects, bisphenol A, phthalates, tinkers with your hormones, microplastics. And the same people that are holding the revival don't discern that what they've done to their temple is an absolute abject disaster. But some of them might still feel like this is a little unusual, and they won't be open-minded to the fact that maybe God uses a muscle response, because we are energetic beings. So if a person says to me, Joe, well, we're not an energetic being, I would say, well, what do you think your mitochondria is? 90% of your energy comes from the mitochondria. What do you mean you're not an energetic being? So I am completely willing to take back the portions of natural healing that the church has no knowledge of, or has rejected whole cloth for lack of information about. I think that New Age mysticism has hijacked a lot of what God has made available to us for free. Do you agree?
I do agree. I think, it's kind of interesting because Scripture tells us that we're fearfully and wonderfully made. It also tells us that my people suffer for lack of knowledge. And then you have some strange things in Scripture. You have iron axe heads that float. You've got donkeys that talk. You've got people who take a prayer cloth and then walk several hundred miles and throw it on a sick person and they get better. So clearly there are things here that we don't fully understand. Yeah. And science tells us that the human mind is set up in such a way that if you come in contact with new information, if you don't already have a favorable reference for it, well, then the answer is no, because the brain feels threatened. And then you'll think of everything you can to keep the answer no so you can feel safe. So if somebody feels strange about this, I don't have a problem with that. I felt strange with it. It's just a type of science that somebody hasn't taken the time to show you. I don't think there's any difference between sound biblical interpretation and properly executed science. I think there's a world of difference between odd scriptural doctrine and shoddy science. And so much of science today, unfortunately, what's driving it is not the objectivity of trying to find the truth as much as it's political reasons, financial reasons, ego or control reasons. And so I'm not saying I love science, but I'm not saying that today's science is as pure as everybody would like it to believe.
For sure.
It's true, yeah.
And then, and where do you come in contact with proper information? If you're not explained properly about how and why the body works, then none of this is going to make sense.
And you brought some, just for educational purposes, you brought some more examples of just basic science that help support some of what you're describing.
Let's go ahead and explain here. So what I have is I have two glass jars. In one, we have a Brussels sprout, and in the other one, we have regular processed cane sugar, which is really a cell toxin. This is a poison, even though it's heavily laden in our diet. Now, I know that these are inside glass, and I'll explain in a moment how and why that could possibly work. But one of the things you could do with muscle testing is you could take substances and you could place it within somebody's energetic field, and then you can see, does it enhance the body's strength or does it weaken the body's strength? And that gives you a clue as to whether that body would consider it to be a poison or a nutrient. So let's take the sugar and let's take the arm out this way again. Hold strong, and that's our baseline. If I come over here and I put sugar against her body, just nothing. I mean, she's just super weak. If I come out, I can go and I can press really hard, and that's not a problem, but I do this, and it's just a poison. So her body registered as a weakened field. Now, if I take a Brussels sprout, some people may not like Brussels sprouts, but it doesn't mean there isn't nutrition in it that her body would like. So I can take this, and she's perfectly strong. She won't go down, but the minute you put the sugar back in her field, it weakens her field. So you can get a clue, because there's something called bioindividuality, and what one person's body needs may not be what another person. What might be lightly poisonous to one person could be heavily poisonous to another person, and this is one way to determine that. So then the question becomes, well, wait a minute, this is inside glass, and you got plastic lids. How is that possible to register outside these little jars? Well, one way to demonstrate that is if I take, let's say, a plastic clipboard. So plastic is non-conductive. So if somebody were to put their hand on the clipboard and then you were to take a extension cord and plug it in, but the one end of the extension cord, the wires are bare and frayed. You're holding on to the insulated part. If you touch the bare, frayed wires that are conducting electricity because it's plugged into the wall, the person with the hand on top will feel any type of electrical shock, because most plastics are an insulator, and they'll keep you from being shocked. However, if I put something like a piece of metal here and I come over with a magnet, I can take that magnet and I could influence the metal through the insulating plastic, because magnetic fields can travel past insulators. And so that's essentially what's happening here. There's a frequency in here. The collection of molecules and chemicals inside this product has a different frequency set than what nature's providing through something like a Brussels sprout. This is a disharmonizing frequency, and this is a harmonizing or strengthening frequency. All we're doing is, does this agree or disagree? Does this agree or disagree? And then you could start underlining what is happening to this person's body that is causing the disruption. And it might lead to further, more data leads to further questions. Tell me about your habits. How much sugar might you be consuming? What's your typical diet? But this is a quick way to get to the conversation without having to spend a lot of other times in areas that doesn't seem to matter to her body.
I think there's so much more to how our body works, body, mind, and spirit, and we need to be careful. Discernment for sure, but also we don't want to completely shun something that is actually God's design. So in a lot of ways, when people hear about muscle testing or applied kinesiology, they instantly think, oh, that sounds new age, because Satan likes to take things that are godly and pure and corrupt them and to use them for his own purposes. For example, breath. God gave Adam breath. It's important. Breathing works to slow down our heart rate, to improve our cortisol levels, to reduce stress, to improve our nervous system. And yet we hear things like meditative breathing and clearing chakras. And that is where Satan takes something so pure and so holy, and he flips it and corrupts it to lead people away from the truth and away from what God has for us. And so I love this analogy that you gave to me when we were speaking on the phone, where you said, if you have a cupcake and Satan swipes some of the frosting, does it make the entire cupcake evil?
Well, it's true. I would say in any area of human endeavor, especially in these times that we live in now, there's corruption, there's contamination. And I think that the Lord tells us that we are to pray for knowledge, wisdom, understanding, and discernment. I think unfortunately, can you be saved and be very non-discerning? And the answer is yes. So I think we're supposed to guard our hearts, and we're supposed to protect ourselves against contamination. But sometimes, if you have a piece of meat or something that you want to eat and there's some fat that looks like it's maybe not good or something, and you want to take it off, you could remove things that are not going to be beneficial or helpful for you and still get the benefit of what you're shooting for. And I just see that in terms of with muscle testing. You have to watch out. Are there people out there with new age philosophies? Yes. Can it contaminate the way they muscle test? Yes. Can it create problems in terms of influencing your conscience. Because if you sit there and you go, I don't like that there's a bunch of New Age symbols in this room. Okay, well, then don't violate your conscience, and please stay away and try and find a practitioner who maybe is looking at this as a science tool and not looking at it as some kind of religious belief or New Age ritual, because that's always possible. That's possible anywhere you go. And for any healthcare practitioner, you don't know who they are, what their religious beliefs are, and yet we trust them wholly depending on our belief system. So do we need to pray for discernment? I think absolutely, in all things, not just this.
As Jamie said, there's so much that the world has hijacked and then repackaged to steer you away from God. And yet the fundamental architect behind how our bodies work is our Creator God. And, yoga is a perfect example of this to me. Salutations to the sun god. Much of it is parody ritual or parody of or direct interaction with entities or shows of respect to the different elementals, etc. And yet, when you divorce yourself of all of the spiritual garbage that people have assigned to it, you look at what's happening to the 75-year-old man that holds a 2-pound dumbbell like this for 60-second intervals. You put his muscles under tension, time under tension, and you look at how he's building strength, he's dropping glycemic overloads, his heart likes all the development of the new capillaries. There is proven, legitimate science behind doing this, right? But if you then package it in New Age, you've stolen and deterred from those that might have benefited from doing this because they've been conditioned to believe that doing that is to talk to the dead or to salute an entity or something like that. So, not to carry on and on and on, you have to use discernment. If you're out there watching this program today and you're thinking, this was really fascinating and I'd like to learn more, unfortunately, there aren't a lot of resources where Dr. Ralph and I can say, go online without knowing for sure you won't be misguided by New Ageism because it is so prevalent.
Yeah.
And it has hijacked so much when it comes to energy and our mitochondria and our thoughts and our feelings and so forth. But what I would do, and I can safely suggest this, find a practitioner of your choosing that aligns with your godly values and ask them, hey, have you ever heard of muscle resistance testing, or have you ever heard of applied kinesiology? And see what they come up with for you. See if they don't have a way of answering maybe some additional questions that we didn't have time to address in this program today. Unfortunately, we're all out of time. It's time to take back what the world has stolen and put it back under the framework that God has given us access to all kinds of stuff that you're not learning about in Western medicine. Are we agreed? For everybody here in studio, Dr. Ralph, thank you so much for joining us this week on LifeTVnow. I'm Joe Artis Horn. Keep your eyes on the prize, which is Jesus Christ. We'll be back.